Hi Abhishek, Shantanu here from Hindustan Times. Congratulations on Killer Soup. Firstly, I want to begin by asking you about the design of the show, which is quite fable-like and very quirky. Tell me a little bit about why that shape-shifting tone was necessary.
The tone came from the tone of the story came very early on. It was all there during the writing. It was not something. It was not an afterthought. This is a pretty wild story. I mean, if you think about it, it's a crazy patchwork of various things. So when the story came to me from my writers Anantuneza and Harshad, what appealed to me was its sort of a tone and a dangerous sort of a tone. It was going to be a challenge directorially to pull this off, and that challenge was what was fun about it. The point that the story is trying to make, is one thing, but the manner in which it is told, the world that it creates, it's sort of, you're absolutely right, it's sort of fable like. It's also a sort of, when you read a graphic novel, that's sort of a world. And that was the fun part of doing this show. So the tone was always there right from the beginning. But of course, the challenge was maintaining the fine balance. It was a bit of a tightrope, maintaining it through the writing and the shooting, and thereafter in editing and all of that. So yeah, it was a challenge, but that was the fun part for me. That was the mood was the fun part for me. That's what I wanted to do.
Okay, while I was watching Killer Soup, I was obviously trying to keep track of all of the threads, of course, but also genuinely interested in the plethora of supporting characters that you have sprinkled in the show, from Swati to Arvind and down to the memorable Thupali, who I'll come to later. There's so much going on at once. I've noticed that in everything you have done so far, there's always an ensemble cast, always a myriad of characters. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I mean, the characters that came into the story had to be an integral part of this story. Somewhere what I was trying to do, what we were trying to do very early on when we were writing, in the early stages of the writing, there was always a struggle to understand what we are eventually going to be talking about. What is it that we're trying to really say in this story? I mean, it is important for me as a filmmaker in only so much to try and understand, sort of it's almost sort of a barometer for you to work with. This, every scene, every moment needs to reflect that. So for me, the important part of the story was that it's talking about how power operates within the confines of a family, and thereafter, and by that measure, how it operates in the world. So we needed a family that we were talking about. This story starts from a very small scale, just starts between a husband and wife and a lover. But when we realize that the main thrust of the narrative is this woman trying to get, find herself, sort of get to position of power from being subjected, to this sort of existence that she's had within the family, we needed to create a number of characters within the family so that this theme comes out. So therefore, you have the angry, vulgar patriarch in Sayaji Shinde. You have Apeksha, who's sort of a partner in crime, and also another woman seeking, to make a place in the world. Uh, and you have other characters in the family, like Charles Lucas, who's probably the father of Apeksha. And then you have, then the other world of the story is the cops, in which you have Nasser's character, Hassan, and Thupali and Asha. So somewhere when we are talking about how power operates in the world, we are also talking about how, when you try to acquire unsavory means to acquire that power, there are going to be consequences. And, and the cops are the consequences. Thupali is the consequence of what you're doing. And it's for Hassan and eventually for Swati. So we had all of these characters who are sort of representing something for Swati. And what it gave me an opportunity to create a very unique, fun sort of characters that, which are not caricaturized, but it's more something that you will see in a comic book world, in a sort of fictional world. Those sort of characters, they are, to the best of my ability, they are rounded off and real, feeling real as people. But they are also, their mannerisms, their behavior, their costuming, their look, the way of acting, speaking, all of this sort of reminds you of a fictional sort of a world. Yeah, and it's almost trying to create a sort of a, I mean, when we talk of mythology, we talk of it in very fantastical terms. But this is, in that sense, a realistic sort of a mythology where you have these kind of characters. You have the Khansama and you have the Mehrunisa, who's the hairdresser. They are like witches, and that's why they are so exaggerated. That's why they behave in that way, because they are like witches. It's almost literally making a brew, all the time. So that's the plane in which I saw the story, and that's the plane in which I created these characters, and that's the plane at which I wanted the performances to land also. Which makes it challenging to execute, also makes it very challenging, sometimes very challenging for the viewer to get into this world and say, really, I mean, it takes a little bit of time for them to reach that level where the story is asking them to go. So these were fun characters. It's also a break from some of the realistic work that I have been doing in the recent past in Soncharia and Urta Punjab, which was fairly real, as real as our mainstream cinema can be. So I just wanted to break from that and create, like you said, fable-like structure, fable-like story, in which you have characters that you would come across in a fictional fable-like world.
That's wonderful. Tell me a little bit about Thupali's arc in particular. I was fascinated by how the poems were used and how it kind of gave way to magic realism when it was least expected, because there was so much happening around him, around the plot also, but there was a certain amount of mystery and beauty to the way it was all captured. Were you ever concerned that it would not land in the larger scope of the narrative? Was there ever concern like that?
That concern, that fear you live with each and every moment that you're making a show, particularly a show like this, that you're always afraid that people are not going to get it. But you go out on a limb, you go for broke, and you say, let's see, let's go all the way with it, sort of. Tupali, for me, I mean, Tupali starts out, and he's a real living, breathing character only in episode 2. He is this extremely enthusiastic, upright, honest, diligent young boy who is working as a police officer, and he's preparing for civil services exams so that he can, return to the force as an IPS officer. So he wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning, does his exercises, and also prepares for the exam, and then gets to work by 7 a.m. in the morning. So he's that kind of guy. He's extremely diligent. He is one of the characters in this world. He's perhaps the only one who is looking to achieve his goals and he's going about it in an honest and true manner. Nobody else is doing it. Literally nobody else. So he and it's just so ironical that in this sort of a world, he's the one who's not going to get it, which is sort of a reflection of the true world in any case. I mean, that's how our world is. I mean, people who are honest and diligent and they never get their due. And that's the tragedy that happens. And now that police track is really about Hassan, you know, Hassan, the police officer, because Hassan somehow, he's cynical. He's about to retire. He's cynical about the job. He's also, lazy and lackadaisical, doesn't take it much seriously anymore. And he sees this young, enthusiastic rookie, and he is almost afraid for him in the beginning, do chill out, calm down, because he at that point just thinks that, the disillusionment for this kid is around the corner, and he doesn't want that to happen. But when he dies, Hassan takes it upon himself. He feels that it was because of him, because he did not take care of this young boy, because he did not take him seriously, because he did not listen to him, that the kid is lost, and it's sort of he's guilt ridden because of that, and he takes to the bottle in a big way, and that's when Tupali sort of comes back to him in a state of inebriation and complete. So I mean, he's a bit of both. He's also a supernatural specter, but he's also a sort of reflection of Hassan's own guilt, and he's carrying that book around. Now it just stands to reason because Tupali, wanted he's come doesn't come from privilege, so his English is a little bit weak. So he studies a lot of English, and one way to learn English quickly, nicely, is to read poems. So he reads poems. So it just stands, and Hassan has acquired that book, so he's leafing through that poetry book. So it just stands to reason that when Tupali does appear to him, he can only speak in verse, you know, and that sort of begins his own search. So now, how I wanted it to work was this. What I was intending to do was this: that all the deductions that Hassan is making on the surface looks like it is coming from the clues, the poetry clues that Tupali is giving to him. But at the same time, things that are happening are also happening in real life. For example, when he goes to the forest, he gives that dog a smell of the book, so she knows what Tupali smells like, and she gets to the grave, and so and so on and so forth. In the fifth episode, when Tupali tells him, go back to the beginning and think about it. He remembers that Tupali told him that, that Manisha Koirala woman has killed, so he goes to the Khansama. So all of those are there. The real life clues are also there, but it just appears to Hassan that he is operating from Tupali's clues at this time. And also what happens is that what Tupali is trying to tell him through all the poetry, including what happens in the seventh episode, is also sort of a reflection of what is going on in the story. So he sort of fulfills the purpose of a Shakespearean chorus. When in the late Elizabethan plays, 500 years ago, there was this technique of having a chorus which sort of does commentary on the goings on in the main plot. So Tupali also kind of sort of becomes that person, becomes that voice, sort of a voice of the chorus, the sort of the moral conscience of the story. And that's what we see at the end as well.
How lovely. I loved that you mentioned the aspect of chorus in Shakespeare and how well it kind of merges into the narrative. If I have to link a common thread about all of your work, I see that your characters somehow always want to strive for agency and the drive for power. I think that is something that I see in everything that you have done so
I
far.
think you're absolutely
Killer Soup does it. Killer Soup does it within all the paradoxes, of course. Talk to me about that thematic length that underlines all of that.
I mean, the man's need or lust for power has been a preoccupation with me as a filmmaker. I have always seen it, and it's for me it is about the futility of it. I think power is the search for power is a futile exercise, and it's a destructive exercise by its very nature. There is nothing like power. It's nothing. Power, nothing good comes out of power. So, and I also feel the opposite of love is not hate; it's power. Being in love is being powerless. Keep being completely open with your guard down, and power is the exact opposite of that. So that's been my primary preoccupation as a filmmaker from Ishqiya. Where you have the husband who is in search for power, and his lust for power, drive for power, drives him to killing his own wife. I mean, so that something has been, and I think it is the primary preoccupation of the age that we live in. Or no, it's been there. It's timeless. This lust for power, it always has been. It's how human society is structured, and we need power because we need resources, we need control. And I just feel as a filmmaker, as an artist, that if I can, in my stories, just sort of hint to people that this will only bring about your destruction. Now what I'm doing here in Soup is I'm trying to do it with a sort of a feminist lens. in the sense you see Swati, who's a woman, who who although comes from, is married to wealth, a family that has enormous amount of wealth, but there is a system of the old patriarchy running within the family, and the patriarchs, both of them, the brother-in-law and the husband, they are patriarchy in all its glory, loud, vulgar, burping, farting. That's what patriarchy is, so and it's death by a thousand cuts. So it's not that, it's outright misogyny where she's being beaten up or, being kicked around. It's just being just the way they don't treat her with respect. They don't talk properly to her. That's how it also operates, where she's shown her place day in, day out, with these little gestures and these little comments. So, so it's a feminist lens where she says, no, screw this. I'm now going to go and I'm going to seek my own destiny. I'm going to go and acquire my power. And what I intend to do is give you some sort of sympathy towards Swati, But what it drives her to do is to seek the very same power that the patriarchs have been having. That is the nature of power, and she will stop at nothing to get it. Now, this has consequences, when you seek power like that. And that's why she transforms from being somebody who's wronged to being the perpetrator of those crimes, those very crimes. So that's the arc, in that sense. So you've created this world where you've taken agency of, the women in the family. But when they come to get it, it's not going to be nice. It's going to be the same violent, process that you have subjected to them. They're going to take the same. So it's like that. That's sort of the theme.
Wonderful. And lastly, what are you cooking next? Manoj has already said that he keeps you asking about Killer Soup 2. So can we expect a second season? Yeah.
There are various ideas in development, various stages of development at the moment. I'm also developing another series, which we have started writing. I've written a film, which is a very exciting film about the youth today, and yeah, it's an exciting film. And I also hope to make that. I hope I can make it for the big screen. I know big screens has become this sort of a thing. You're only watching a certain kind of film in the theaters now. But I hope that's about to change, and we can also get a little more middle of the road, a little more, cinema that's a little more out there. So that, and of course, as and when Netflix gets back to me, we are working on season 2 as well. And let's see where that goes.
Lovely. Thank you for doing this and cannot wait to see what you do next.
Thank you very much, Sanjay.